Hello, welcome to my show. This is Olio, and my name is Susan Rushton. And before we go any further, I need, as always, to explain what Olio means. One definition is that it's short for olla podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl or rotten pot. I like rotten bowl. It's a Spanish-Portuguese dish with essentially everything in the world in it. Bacon, in fact, pork of all its iterations, including sausage and pig's ears and bacon and as well as chicken and chickpeas and cabbage and carrots and beans, onions and garlic, of course, as I said, everything in the world in it except bananas and mandarin oranges. That's one definition of olio. Another definition is that olio is what comes in between acts of a melodrama. So you might have somebody juggling, you might have somebody doing a song, you might have somebody doing a skit, and none of it has anything to do with anything else. So in other words, it's apples, oranges, and a monkey wrench. So welcome to my monkey wrench. Today, my guest is Tomas Evangelista. Thank you, Tomas, for joining me. Tomas is a board member at Placer County Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Advisory Board. He's an executive director at Evangelists Community Relations, and he can be gotten hold of at Evangelista Community Relations at gmail.com. Sir, you don't live in Auburn at the moment. You live in Lincoln. You want to come back to Auburn. Yes. And when did you come to the United States?
First of all, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
For having me again. This is my second interview here, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to share my story and share the challenges of being undocumented and growing up in the United States. Well, I first arrived in Auburn at the age of 6.
6. Your parents brought you?
Well, there was a tragic family situation.
What I meant was you had no say about it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely did not have a say about it. But when we arrived, it was due to my mother contracting cancer. At that, a year prior to that, we were in a situation where she needed care for that cancer. She was receiving it originally in Santa Barbara, where we first arrived when I was 2 years old. But unfortunately, the cancer was advancing. She needed another type of treatment that was only possible in Mexico, so she had to go back to Mexico to receive additional treatment in hopes that it would cure this cancer. And at that time, my grandparents were in the United States as well. They were in Los Angeles. We moved to Los Angeles briefly for a few months around the age of 5. My mother went back to Mexico to receive treatment. Unfortunately, by the time she was in Mexico, the cancer had advanced, and we knew that it was terminal. So my grandparents needed to return to Mexico because she was going to pass. And so at that moment, we came to Auburn because we had I had an aunt that was already in Auburn, and so we moved here. I arrived here around the age of 6. She passed in August of 1996. Of course, us being children, it was so difficult to go back.
Of course.
And make the journey back to the United States. I think my mother's wishes were that we stay here, and that our last memories of her were of her being with us healthy, and not her on her deathbed and being passing. So we arrived here due to those horrible circumstances, but I think as a child, you didn't really understand what was going on, aside from.
And even if you did, you couldn't do anything about it. You're a kid.
Right.
And now you're not. And so how old are you?
33.
Okay, 33. And so your being in the United States has not been your fault or your idea or even up to you, but here you are. You speak English well, and I'm sure you speak Spanish even better. And you, as I said, he is deeply involved in Auburn and it's what's going on here. And I would like to I find it wonderful that even though you are not a citizen, you're certainly behaving like one. You're at work. You're doing stuff. You're making life better. And the primary reason I asked Tomas to join me today is what he shared on Facebook. I think it was Facebook.
Yes.
Several months ago, and I'm going to read this. This doesn't feel real, but it is. I was approved for permanent residency. In 3 years, I will be eligible to apply for citizenship. I've been so open and public with my story that it's only fair to share the good news. Thank you. This wouldn't be possible without the support and help of my lovely wife and family. Probably would, but yes, the more people, the better. I'm blessed with so much support. I hope to share more of this journey and the challenges as in the near future. It isn't as simple as just applying, and I can imagine you've applied several times.
Well, actually, the only reason I was able to become a permanent resident was due to my wife finding love, because I had no path other than that way. But of course...
What do you mean you had no path other than that way?
Well, right now, with the current laws, I wouldn't be able just to go and apply, and I think that is something that's important to share.
Because you're married.
Well, previous to my marriage, I wouldn't be able to apply to become a permanent resident. Because I came here undocumented, even as a child, there are laws that prevent me from even applying to become a citizen, to become a permanent resident, have legal status. And that is what keeps other Dreamer DACA recipients, other parents that, although they came here 30 years ago, they're still unable to even apply or to become a permanent resident like I am now. There are certain processes that you can, or there are certain avenues if you're married, if you have a child that's a citizen, if you have an adult that's a citizen. I think sibling is the last option, but when you do apply for the...
You mean if you are a sibling of a person? Okay.
That is a citizen, but that is the bottom tier, and that could take 20 years to if your sibling is a citizen, you can petition for them, but it takes 20 years. The one that takes maybe a year or two is when you have a spouse that's a citizen. That's the category that I fit into, but it still takes thousands of dollars. I spent $7,000 in attorney fees, along with other fees that come along with it, and it's also still not for sure approval process. You do go through a lot of background checks. You do have to provide plenty of information that you've been here continuously from the moment that you came to the United States. So that's a lot of stack of papers, school records, everything, bank statements, a lot of things that share. So I was only able to become a permanent resident after I got married, and I'm thankful that I found love and was able to get married and able to begin that process.
And is she a citizen?
Yes, she is a citizen.
And that's not the only reason you married her?
No, that's definitely not the only reason I married her. We actually met the last interview around the time that we had our last interview, late 2017. Dated for a year, and then I got married in late 2018.
Okay. Okay. So
And then-
yeah. So a lovely woman.
Yes.
Who and you get along and you have a good time, and do you have any children?
Not yet, no,
Yeah,
but
okay.
that will be coming soon.
Good. Good. So what is it that keeps you here aside from your wife and the joy of aiming toward and your work and aiming and you're aiming toward children. Do you go back to Mexico much?
Not yet, actually, but I did go back in 2021, and I was only able to, unfortunately, due to another tragedy. When I wasn't yet a permanent resident, but when I had DACA, it's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, that protected me from deportation, but it also allowed you to apply for what's called advanced parole, and so you're able to go back to your home country for humanitarian reasons. My grandmother on my father's side passed, and so I applied for that, and I was able to go back and be a part of her funeral, which was the first time that I was able to return to my home country for 31 years. I arrived here when I was in 1992, and so it was an experience that I'll never forget, and I hope to be back soon. But I was able to go back in 2021.
Yeah. Okay. Is it going back to being here and not being a resident? No, a
Permanent resident?
Yeah. Is it risky?
Yes.
Just wandering around.
Oh, here in the United States as a permanent resident?
Yeah.
No.
You're not not as a before you became a permanent resident.
Yes.
That's risky. Even so, you have you work you make yourself obvious, because I wouldn't know about you if you hadn't made yourself obvious. That seems to me to be very brave.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The only I get my strength to do this, of course, because of my family. The courage that it took my mother, my family to come here. They came here for us to have a better life, but I also am encouraged and frankly protected by people in the community as well. The community of Auburn, like I mentioned earlier, when I arrived when I was 6, has embraced me and my family. There was moments growing up that I needed help in school. There were teachers, coaches that literally took me by the hand and made sure that I was playing sports, that my family was well. And these are people that back then probably didn't know that we didn't have legal status in this country, but it didn't matter.
You're a person, you needed help, and they gave it to you.
And even when I was trying to go to college, and I had the challenges of being undocumented, there were people like Patricia Leffridge that I've mentioned often. She was, I think right now she's a principal at in
Meta Vista.
Yeah, in Meta Vista. She was a huge part in my family being well and getting what we needed. And so when I think of them and also the other young Latinos that are in the community, and I really feel like I need to be out there and give a voice to the people that are unable to. I had a sliver of protection with DACA, which I think...
And DACA stands for?
Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Okay.
That was introduced in 2012. It was an executive order by then President Barack Obama, and prior to
What a surprise!
yeah, prior to that, like there was no protection, and you could be deported even as a child.
Uh-huh.
There were deportations as children, and it was a huge moment. I was in college at the time, and after that, I've had a little bit more courage knowing that I did have at least a sliver of protection with DACA. But of course, as we know, it's not permanent, and every 2 years you need to reapply, and then there have been attempts to take away the program. But we, in reality, need something that's much more stable. We need to be able to have an opportunity to even apply to be a permanent resident. There are plenty of people throughout the United States, like myself, that are vocal, that do a lot of good things in the community, and I think others deserve an opportunity. If we want to be a part of this country, we should be able to apply and be much more permanent part of our communities.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
There's, yeah. So you are what? Well, I have said that you are the executive director at Evangelist Community Relations. What is that?
Well, that is my own business that I started in 2019. From 2017 when I started speaking out and trying to find a solution to the issue that I was facing.
And other people
as well. I started getting involved in, politically and being a part of campaigns and
attracting attention to you.
Yes, and
that's courageous, in my opinion. Yes,
and reaching voters, reaching people that don't vote, that are maybe not get the information needed through certain medias like the news or so. I thought of this idea of like, why don't I help build strategies to reach large mass amount of people through direct contact, door to door, phone banking, text banking, but door to door is really where we have our best contact and conversations. So when the 2020 census came up, I started my business. We were able to help thousands of people in Placer County and in other neighboring counties complete their 2020 census. We did a lot of also work to get out the vote for youth in Placer. Placer Community Foundation gave us a contract to help.
Voting. Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Yes. I encourage everyone, no matter which political side, to use your vote. I feel like if we have 100% voter turnout, no matter the results, we can all accept it. Placer County does great, by the way. It's like 80% around around average of voter turnout.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah,
good.
Which is very high.
You heard that. 80% of Placer County voters vote.
In 2020.
In 2020.
It varies in other years.
Wouldn't that be great if more than that voted?
Yeah, definitely. Especially our youth. I think there's voices out there that need to be heard, 18 and up, to vote and get involved in our political process. I think it's a beautiful thing when we all use it.
Absolutely. Yes. And how long have you been involved with mental health, alcohol, and drug advisory board?
Well, I joined their board a year ago. I really wanted to begin my service to our county. I graduated from college in 2014. I have my degree in kinesiology.
In what?
Kinesiology.
Which is?
It's the study of the body's movements. That's
why you ran last weekend.
I ran 26 miles last weekend, yes.
But he's sore today.
I am a little bit sore, yeah. I I concentrated in health and wellness promotion. So after I graduated, I started working for the Latino Leadership Council. Aside from running some of their youth programs, I also got involved with mental health and homeless outreach, and I did that work for a few years. My brother, or I have a brother that struggles with mental illness, so we have a lived experience with somebody in the household that struggles with mental illness. Thankfully, things are well and he's doing
Good.
well. But through that experience, I felt like I could give back, and obviously also my experience of being Latino in this community and undocumented, I bring some different perspective, and I like to use that and share that, especially with our services that are given to our adults and children in this county. And I sit on that board right now, and I hope to, if I find a little bit more time, to join a few other boards and give back.
Oh, my boy. Yes. My goodness. Time. Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm impressed. Yes. So that's pushing people, encouraging people, asking people to vote, begging. That's sometimes what it entails. Encouraging, urging, sharing information. That's a wonderful thing, and I can imagine that some going sort of negatively here. I can imagine that some people who know that you are not a citizen would think, who are you to tell me or tell anybody? What do you say?
Well, I don't get that in Auburn.
Oh,
you know,
hey.
Auburn. I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I don't know if just some
And
people.
why am I surprised? Yeah. Geez.
There, of course, you know, I am not. There's also been experiences of other people that that haven't been so pleasant. But for me, it comes with the privilege of probably speaking English well, and
Yes.
somebody not. I can say something back to somebody and argue back with them on this certain issue, but I feel like I've never gotten. Actually, no, I take that back.
Not very often, anyway.
In 2018, and I think July, when the Board of Supervisors were deciding on a certain state law, I think it was SB 49, the sanctuary city law for the state of California, there was a large attraction of people from outside of Auburn, from different parts of our state that came, and I remember receiving a lot of hateful comments and things like that. So, but luckily our board understood that state law, they couldn't do anything about it, but also it would be hurtful to some of our communities that I think it would send a bad sign and send a lot of fear to families that are just trying to do well and raise their families, and but luckily that's probably the only time
good to the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
To the town.
I think that was the only time where I did receive some pushback, but other than that, I haven't in our community yet, and I hope I don't, and I hope that, you know, with me being so public, you know, come to me with some questions. If you want to truly learn more about what it means to be undocumented, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. First of all, that it's great, or that there's a lot of help that comes to somebody being undocumented. I've heard things like, oh, they will give you housing, they'll give you things like laptops, computers, all these other things, you get assistance. None of that is true. In our experiences, we struggled a lot, and we didn't qualify for any assistance. Even when we did need it, when I was growing up, we weren't able to apply and get assistance because of our status. We didn't have I didn't drive till I was 23.
Me either, but not for that reason.
We walked all over Auburn. We used transportation, public transportation. So grateful for all those services that were available, and we utilized those to, get to where we are now. And that's why when I think of what I can do, I think of all these services that I used, that were public services like transportation, and sometimes even on the occasional Christmas where we couldn't get as many gifts, we used what was then available through shelters and things that were, they had, Christmas gifts for children. We took part of those, and as a child I didn't know what that was, but now as an adult I can see that was through the generosity of our community, to help those that weren't able to have a good Christmas.
Help, yes. Yeah.
And so I want to. That's why I'm so public, in part to say thank you, to those that give, and also to see how I can give, and use my experiences to shed a little bit of light, and so that people can understand a little bit better, and we can live in harmony.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's wonderful that you have learned about giving and the generosity of this area. The generosity of this area. I'm just thrilled. And you're giving back. That's wonderful. And if somebody wants to know more, certainly they should contact you.
Yeah.
Do you have a phone number?
I do.
Which is?
530.
So tell them.
530-718-4937. Just make sure you tell me who you are, and that you learned about me from this interview. I do get some text messages or phone calls that I try not to.
Sure.
I don't know who they are, so just as long as I get a little message saying I saw your interview, even if it's a voicemail, I'll gladly respond when I have time.
Yeah, okay, good. Tomas Evangelista. Do you have anything to say to anybody watching in Spanish?
Bueno, nomás quiero decir que me da mucho gusto estar aquí con Susan, y muchas gracias por invitarme a contar mi historia. Y para los que están oyendo esta entrevista, que sigan luchando, que le echen ganas, y si necesitan ayuda, pues me pueden llamar a mí, para que yo les pueda ayudar en lo que necesiten. Muchas gracias a mi familia, a mis abuelitos, a mis tías y mis tíos, mis hermanos, por todo el apoyo que me han dado en todo este tiempo. Lo agradezco mucho, y ojalá que estén orgullosos de mí. Muchas gracias.
Sí. Gracias. That's about all I know, except for Oya Patruga. I'm so envious. You know at least 2 languages beautifully, and I know 1 language pretty well. And that's, I think, a reason people who know 2 languages have more in their heads than people with 1 language. And that's what I think we need. Tomas, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your coming, and appreciate your coming again. And if you want to know more about Evangelista Community Relations, log on to evangelistacommunityrelations@gmail.com. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Susan.
And
it's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching.